hold that during that.
We'll get started. You'll have to slide over to the right here. Well, good evening. We're just getting started here. Bill's getting lined up. We're going to do breakfast with Bill. Dinner edition, is that right?
Yeah, and my phone's crooked to the world, so I don't know if I'm going to have to do it this way. We're going to try it. Or maybe I got Sean on mine. I'm not sure. I got 5 people going. Okay. Let me see here. Am I live? Yeah, I got Sean. I haven't done mine yet.
There you go. All right, just a few technical difficulties.
I'm just going to start broadcasting without a title. People can find me if not.
There you go.
There we go. Supper with Sean, breakfast with Bill, night edition.
There you go.
How's that work? Let me turn the camera around. There.
All right, Bill's so much smoother at this than I am, but...
I wouldn't say that. Technical difficulties.
Yeah. Well, hey, thanks for joining us tonight. We've got supper with Sean and breakfast with Bill, so all of our meals should be complete, but tonight we're here in Woodford County, Illinois, in Eureka at the 4-H Park, and Bill has joined us to share some advice for young farmers. And Bill, of course, has a lot of history, so we're excited for the group to learn a little bit about what's going on. And Bill, just for the audience, what do you think, kind of as we are challenged, what are the top 3 things that we as young farmers really need to know and we can share?
Well, I tell you what, as a young farmer, there's 3 things that are going to challenge you, and that's profitability, profitability, profitability.
Mm-hmm.
You got to be profitable to be successful. You got to be profitable to grow. You got to be profitable to stay in the game. We can talk a lot about everything else looking good. Okay, hey, we got somebody going there.
There you go.
Yeah, got my Hawaiian shirt on. I've never been to Hawaii either. And by the way, too, we got Derek Stewart is holding a phone for Sean, and the Stewart boys are actually responsible for me getting up here and kind of hooking up with Sean. I mean, it was it's a long story, but it's kind of they found me on Facebook, I think, and followed me over to Twitter.
Farm and Ranch Country.
Farm and Ranch Country. They were looking for ag podcasts. That's right. They were looking for ag podcasts, and I do those podcasts. But young farmers, I mean, and I tell you what, just talking to Derek's brother, as a young farmer too, depending on your size, you got to decide: am I going to go, for lack of a better word, the small farmer route? Think outside the box.
Right.
Grow hay, grow organic soybeans. We talked about it before. Organic milk, doing the pasture-raised chickens, all that kind of stuff.
Right.
Or are you going to go try to get the paint disease and get a bunch of big farm equipment and rent a bunch of ground and try to become a large old farmer quickly? So as a young farmer, you got to kind of, I think, in this day and age, decide which way you want to go.
Yeah.
And that when I started it out, there wasn't an option. This is what you're going to do. Now, maybe the option was actually better because all of us young farmers, not all of us, but a lot of us, started out in the hog industry. The old mortgage lifters, hogs were the mortgage lifters. That's gone away.
Yeah.
So what do we do now? Sean, you're a young farmer. What do you see? What's the number one thing challenging you? What's the number one thing challenging you?
Well, I think it's profitability. When you, just like you said, it takes a little bit of paint to get started either way, whether you're going to grow organics or whether you're going to go the conventional route. But I think it's about understanding profitability and knowing where your break even is and trying to make sure that you pencil that out. But I think for me, it's profitability, and then really looking 5 to 10 years down the road. What's the next crop? And I've done a supper with Sean about that. We talked about that around the grill, which is why we're kind of sweating out here tonight. But how do you really identify what that trend is going to be? How do you get through it? And especially in light of all the changes, we have to be on the cutting edge here and think outside of the box of what else are we going to do to remain profitable.
Well, one of the things that you scare me with is you talk about what happens if the activists actually get their way and we lose a bunch of herbicides in a 24-month period.
Right.
What do you do then? that changes the world and changes the world drastically. And all of a sudden, the large mega farming, if all of a sudden Roundup's gone, atrazine's gone, Liberty's gone, a bunch of insecticides are gone. You know, we talked about seed treatment. I mean, just the whole gamut of stuff goes away. And they would starve a lot of people around the world, but I really don't think they care because they got enough money to buy it the way they want it done. I mean, you know, and I'll talk a little bit about, you know, Gary Vaynerchuk. I think people have heard me talk about him before. He talks about, you know, really the social media we got going on now is nothing different than what's been going on for the last 5,000, 10,000 years, and that's storytelling.
Yeah.
You got a white egg that costs 20 cents. You got this brown pasture-raised egg that's $1. What's the difference? The brown egg's got a story to tell. And if you use social media now to tell that story, whereas before, as a young farmer, how did you tell your story? You know, well, you could put flyers up, you could do word of mouth, you could maybe take some advertisements out in the newspaper, but you really couldn't maybe get yourself lined up with somebody that was wanting to buy an egg with a story. Today with social media, you can sell an egg with a story and people will find you through social media. And now all of a sudden, you're selling eggs not for 20 cents, but for $1.
Well, I think that's a great segue into one other way that young farmers can get involved with our consumer is doing things like Periscope. And peer pressure, as I explained to the group behind me, is how I got started. Derek, the one behind the camera. And we will be doing a dinner with Derek one of these nights too. So
I'd love to be in on that deal.
We're going to learn about organic farming, and so you know, I think as we look at really using social media and technology to help us. You know, I remember back in 2003 when I went on a Farm Bureau industry tour over to Japan. They were already putting farmers' pictures on meat, so you could see the farmer that you were buying from. So I think we just have a little ways to go to get there. We're starting to see that as we talk about the trends in social media and knowing know your food, know your farmer, you know, and those sorts of campaigns. So it's really a lot of different avenues, and I think each one of us have to understand what works best for each one of us in our scenarios, and it's not going to work for everybody, but you've got to find your niche.
Well, and I'm not really an advocate. I'm not advocating agriculture. I'm just talking about ag to farmers. You know, I like to say that I got the smartest audience in agriculture, and I think I do. I got a couple guys here pretty smart that are sitting at the table that's part of my audience. But I get a ton of people that are not ag people listening in, and they ask some crazy questions every now and then.
They do.
You guys have probably seen them. And sometimes I answer them, and sometimes I'm like, no, we're not talking about that. We're talking about, you know, corn at $4, and is it going to go to $5 or is it going to go to $3.50? I mean, that's what we're talking about today, you know. But yet, if you were a non-farm person, I think you could listen in on what I talk about in the morning and probably learn a lot. Find out it's a lot more complicated than what you did. But the advocating part, I'll let other people do that, and that's great. That's great because non-ag pick up bits and pieces better than nothing. And there's people out there to advocate, and that's great. More power to you. My deal is I love talking to farmers. I love talking to young farmers. I like picking people's brains, and you know, I get these crazy ideas. Is it really crazy? Well, when a couple of you guys say, no, it's not crazy, it's the truth, I'm like, oh, God, you know? And that maybe even scares me more, but I learned so much from people sending stuff into me. I think every farmer should do something like this because the feedback you get is probably more important than what you put out there. Now, I think to you guys, what I put out there, you say is important. You say it's got value to you. But to me, what the comments back that you say to me helps me in my business. So,
sounds great. Well, hey, we've got another group to talk to, and we appreciate everybody joining in tonight for Supper with Sean and Breakfast with Bill. Stay tuned for that night that we get lucky enough to do dinner with Derek or tea with Tim. I remember that. So, you know.
Well, and sorry to my audience, I did not get a title up. I was trying to put a title up, but I'm following Sean, and once Sean started his up, it just blew out of mine and fired up onto his, so I said, I just started up and let's go. And maybe that's some of my stuff. I know my better half would say that it's always in the title, it's always how you do it and everything else. But having fun here tonight, talking to a couple guys, and we need to get rolling. So with that,
good.
Supper with Sean.
Breakfast with Bill. Thanks for watching.
Thanks, and bye.